The purpose of this video will be to cover some basic guidelines for the exams. There'll be two of them in this course. And we'll talk about how to submit the exam, how to basically use the program that you will use to take the exam, and I'll take you through an example of that. Also, my expectations in terms of grading and how you can use the study guide to your advantage. So the first thing is, you see here I'm on the Moodle page for our course, and I'm currently in the General Course Information and Resources area, and there'll be a couple important documents that you'll want to notice here. So to see it, in addition to the syllabus and the response paper guidelines, there's a study guide for each exam. So if you click on this link, you'll go to the study guide for exam 1, and here's the study guide for exam 2. So I'm going to go over the study guide for exam 1, and the reason for that, I'm just going to do exam 1 is because there's really no substantive difference between exam 1 and exam 2. Neither exam is cumulative. The only difference they have is the content. So the first exam is over the first half of the course. The second exam is over the second half of the course. But in terms of the format, they're exactly the same. So whatever I say about exam 1 will also apply to exam 2. So let's go ahead and open up the study guide. And actually, before I do that, there's two places you can find the study guide. One is right here in the general resources and course information area. But you can also find the study guide in the particular week in which the exam occurs. So I think exam 1's in week 8, I believe. And it looks like I'm correct. And here's the exam 1 study guide as well. Okay, so let's open it up. And let's go over the basic points I want to make about the exams. So first, each exam is worth worth 200 points. The format of the exam is you'll be required to answer 2 essay questions, and each of those essay questions will be worth 100 points. So that's 200 points total. All right, so the first thing you should ask yourself is, okay, well, where will these essay questions come from? Will I have them in advance of the exam? And the answer to that question is yes. So there will be 6 possible essay questions that you might have to answer on exam 1. And just to be very, very clear, you will not be able to choose which questions you answer. When we get to the program that administers the exam, we're going to see that it's going to randomly give you 2 questions you have to answer, so it will not be up to you. So you'll need to be prepared for all 6 questions. But first, where are these possible questions? Where do you go to study? So if you go down to the next page on this document, and you will see I have all the possible essay questions listed here below. So here's possible essay 1, the prompt for essay question 1, essay question 2, 3, 4. You'll notice that currently, well, depending on when you're watching this video, so I'm recording this on September 3rd at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Time. So currently at that moment, I haven't posted the questions for essay 5 and 6. It says to be announced, but you will have those well in advance, actually quite soon, well in advance of when you would need them for exam 1. Okay, so the first thing is, you can see that all the possible essay questions are listed here. And I'm going to take you through an essay question a little bit later and just give you a sense of my expectations. But the main thing to say right now is that you can take comfort in the fact that if you are required to give a response to essay 1, it will appear exactly word for word as you see here. There will be no changes, there will be no additions, nothing will be different. So I've given you word for word the possible essay questions you could see on exam 1, and that goes for all the essays that are listed here. Okay, so, and because that's the case, the way I've set this up is to really enable you to engage in gradual preparation throughout the course of the semester. Right, so for instance, exam 1 will take place during week 8 of the course. The program that administers the exam will open up on Monday the 12th of October at 8 a.m. And you have to submit your exam by Friday of that week, the 16th, at the end of the day. Right? So one approach you could take is you could wait till the very last minute, until that week, and then start preparing your answers to these essays. But the reason I'm giving you up front is I really want to encourage you to begin preparing your answers to the essays as soon as possible. And you can trust me, your life will be much easier if by the time you get to the week of the exam, most of the work is already done. You've basically written out rough drafts to all your essay questions. when the week of the exam hits, you're basically just checking it over, seeing if there's anything you want to add, maybe doing some proofreading, but basically all the work is done. And you can also imagine how much easier that will make your life, because I imagine other courses you're taking might also have exams around the same time. So I'm just encouraging you, please take advantage of this. Start preparing now, and just see preparing for the exam as a gradual process where you answer the questions as we cover them in class, when also the material is most fresh in your mind. Okay, so, I've made the points that the questions you will see will be 2 randomly selected questions by the program, and it'll be word for word like the questions you see below. Okay, so I mentioned when the exam will be. You can also see that on the syllabus, right? So the exam 1 is during week 8. The exam 2 is during final exam week. In both cases, you'll have a week to submit your exam. And I should say one other thing about how you submit the exam. So let's go back to the Moodle page for the course for a minute. We're in week 8, so if we go down, you'll see a couple of things. First, this is a demonstration exam. I'm going to actually take you through that program in a second, and it's also going to be available for you to use. And you're not required to do that, but if you just want to get used to the mechanics of how to submit your answers through an exam before you actually open the real thing, you can use this program. You're not required to. It's just there for you to do if it'll make you feel more comfortable. But when it actually is time to take the exam, you will click on this link right here, and it will take you to the exam. It will give you 2 randomly selected questions, and one thing you'll notice is that you will have 20 minutes to make your submissions. Now, the first thing you're probably thinking is, well, wait a minute, 20 minutes isn't nearly enough time to write out answers to those essays. Those essays looked pretty long and detailed, so why do I only get 20 minutes? So I would completely agree. 20 minutes certainly is not enough time for you to complete the essays. And that is intentional. So just as I was saying, ideally you would prepare your essay responses as we move through the semester gradually. The idea is that by the time you click on this link, you have already written out responses to all 6 possible essay questions. And I cannot stress this enough that this is what you should do. Right? The idea is that by giving you only 20 minutes, I'm forcing you to have written out all the essays in advance. And the idea is once you click on that link, the only thing left to do, there is no real philosophical work to do. There's no work to do in terms of answering the questions. All you're doing is uploading the documents. So before, and again, I cannot stress this enough, before you click on exam 1, you should have 6 different Word or PDF documents. Each of those documents should contain a full response to one of the essay questions. And then when you click on that link, all you have to do is upload the right file to the question you're being asked. And so given that, you just want to make sure that you're absolutely ready to submit your answers once you click that, because you're going to get 20 minutes. And once those 20 minutes are up, the program will force you to submit whatever you have, whether it's halfway complete, you didn't even submit to one question, whatever you have will be submitted. So do not click that until you're ready. If you want to take the whole week to prepare your answers, that's totally fine, as long as you get it in by the deadline, but do not click that before you're ready. Okay, I think I've said that probably enough times at this point. And again, I'll take you through the mechanics of that program in a minute. So let me say a few things about how I will grade you. I think the best way to do this is to take a look at an example of one of the questions themselves. So for instance, here is essay question 1. You'll notice if, just as I'm recording this on September 3rd, it actually refers to the material from week 2 that we're currently covering. And there's a couple of elements to the question. So first, you'll notice that there's a title, Glaucon's explanation of immoralism and Hume's response. And sometimes students ask me, do I have to provide an answer to this? No, this is just a title. It just lets you know what the topic of the question is. That's not something you have to respond to. However, what you do have to respond to is everything in here. All right, let's make sure the whole thing is highlighted so there's no confusion. Everything in here. And one point of confusion sometimes is you'll notice the questions have 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. And students will sometimes ask or think, oh, do I get to choose which of those parts to respond to? And the answer is no. In fact, if you ever find yourself thinking that you get to choose which question to respond to or what part of the question to respond to, you are definitely wrong. So these are just two different parts of the question, but you need to answer everything included in here. And the first thing that I will look for when grading your responses is, are your responses complete? That means, did you give a response to everything asked about in the question? So for instance, in this case, if you got this question, what is the immoralist challenge? So I would need a definition of what the immoralist challenge is. And then explain Glaucon's account of immoralism by completely explaining each of the following. Why justice is, quote, an intermediate between the best and worst. I will need an answer to that. An explanation of why all who practice justice do so willingly. What's the reason for that? Why the life of an unjust person is much better than that of a just one. How does Glaucon explain that? So I'm telling you that there are these distinct and specific elements of that question. And the first thing I'll look for is just, did you answer each one of those? Because if you leave any of those unanswered or unaddressed, I'll have a certain amount of points in mind that each of those elements is worth, and you simply just won't get any credit if you don't provide an answer to that element. And the same thing for the second part. So I cannot stress enough, absolutely answer everything that's asked about here. You'll also notice one other aspect of this question, which is true of this question, but not necessarily all questions. It has a quote down here from the reading this question refers to. And if you look at part 2, it says, in your answer, you should discuss the following passage from Hume in a way that shows your understanding. So as you're addressing all of these elements here, I want to see that you refer to this passage, that you say, here's how this passage bears on those questions. Show me you can explain it in your own way, just as in the response papers. Explain in your own way, using your own examples, that shows me you have a deep understanding of thought critically about the point being made in that passage. Okay, so that's the first sort of standard. Do you completely answer everything? Do you follow all the directions? And then, of course, the other standard is just correctness, right? Again, I'll have a certain number of points in mind for each part of the question, and the better, more complete, and more accurately you answer those parts, I will give you more points. Now, of course, that means there's certainly partial credit, right? So partially good answers will give partial credit for sure, but the extent to which, but to get full credit, you would need a completely accurate, a full, complete answer that shows your understanding of the text. That's the main thing I'm looking for. After I read your answer, do I get the impression that this person really understands the lesson, or are they just sort of regurgitating phrases that they heard in the video lectures or on the lesson outlines? And that brings me to my third point, in terms of my grading standards. So one thing you should probably have thought about already, because this is an online course and this exam is happening in a sort of take-home format, you might say, you will have complete access to the lecture videos, all the lecture notes, all the readings. You'll have access to all of that. And it's perfectly acceptable, and I would expect that you would use these things as you are crafting your answers. But because that's the case, so that's a benefit to you, but it also means my grading standards are somewhat higher than they would be if you were taking this exam in class. So if you were taking this exam in an in-class format, where let's say you had an hour and a half to answer these questions, and we're doing it from memory, then of course I'm not going to expect the same precision of language, I'm not going to expect the same detail in your answers. But if you are able to, over a number of weeks in fact, watch the lectures, think about the material, write out your answers, and you have all that time to prepare and do that, then of course my expectations on the actual exam will be higher. So it's important to keep that in mind. Don't expect that the way you'd be graded on an in-class exam where you sit down for 2 hours is the same way in which you'll be graded on this, which is more of a take-home exam format. Okay, so those are the main things I want to say about the exam, how you'll be graded. The last thing I want to do is just take you through this demonstration exam and just show you the sort of nuts and bolts of how the program works. So we'll go ahead and click on the link, this demonstration exam, and I already actually did one of these just before, so it shows I've had an attempt already, but we'll just do a reattempt so that I can show you. So the first thing will come up and say, you're going to start the exam, you're going to have a time limit of 20 minutes, you'll get a timer to count down, and making sure you want to start. And again, I know I've said it a million times, but I really cannot stress enough, before you click that start attempt button, please make sure you have answers to all the possible essay questions written out. Okay, so what do you see when you start the exam? So first you'll get a question. So obviously this is not a question from our actual class or study guide. It says question 1, what is 3 times 4? And you will be given an area to upload a document. So notice you won't be typing your answers or even copy and pasting them into some sort of message box to submit your essays. You will be uploading a Word document or a PDF file. So I'll click on this. I'll go to choose file from my computer, which I've already saved. And let's say I'll click answer to question 1 and upload. Okay, so that's my answer to the first question. So I've uploaded it. I feel good. Let's move on to the next page. And we get to question 2, do you love philosophy? Obviously also not a question on our study guide, but just like before, I'll go choose a file, answer to question 2, upload this file, and now I have a response to question 2. Okay, so I'm ready. I've uploaded a answer to question 1 and question 2. Now I'm ready to finish the attempt. And this will give you a chance to check your work one more time. So let's say, wait a minute, did I upload the right document? Or maybe I want to explain something slightly different, or I want to check something out real quick. You can go back to the questions. So let's go back to question 1, for instance. You can click on your submission, and if you click download, it'll let you view it. All right, so for instance, this is the submission I just made. Here's my excellent answer to question 1, right? But you can view the document that you uploaded. Okay, maybe you make a change or whatever, you feel comfortable. And then we can go back to where we were before. So once you have uploaded your documents, you feel good about your submissions, then you finally finish the exam by clicking submit all and finish. And notice you will have a timer down here, so just be wary of that timer, right? Again, like I said, you should have all the work done before you even open up the exam. But once that 20 minutes is done, you will be closed out, and whatever you have will be submitted, and that will be what is graded. So we click submit all and finish, and then you can just see the answers you gave to the questions. Okay. So that's pretty much all in terms of exam guidelines. As always, if anything is unclear, if you have any questions about how the exams will work, about the possible essays, feel free to shoot me an email, and I would be happy to help you out. But in any case, I will see you in the next video.